Well, it's a first. It's our first ever playoff edition of the Kaufman Corner podcast. Thank you for joining us here. With you, as always, the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. My name is Soren Petro. As we talk some Royals playoff baseball, we wondered if we'd ever be able to do it, Randy, but do it we will. We'll talk about how the Royals pulled this off. What were the keys to the most pleasant surprise of a season in Royals history? What happened to the offense in September? Can they get it started back up? Can Vinnie Pasquantino really be ready? How much of a difference could he make if he is back? What will the playoff roster be? What should it be when it's all said and done? And what are the keys to the series with the Baltimore Orioles? Some of the important matchups, maybe some of the tactics that are going to be taken by the managers. We talk about it right now here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
This is the Kaufman Corner podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Talking some playoff baseball, Randy. Can you believe it? It's actually here. Are you just as giddy as a little schoolgirl?
For the record, Soren, since I know you are meticulous about keeping the records, my playoff optimism meter is at a 10.0 this week.
Is it? Okay.
Just make sure to update your little Excel file with that number.
Yes.
So yes, I am. I'm excited. I'll tell you. Last week, obviously, we talked about how it might have been the worst week in Royals history, and how they looked like they might have pissed away a playoff spot. And then they had the day off on Monday, and Tuesday night, I was like, the stress level for a sporting event for me was as high as it has been in many years, like to the point where I could feel the physical effects. And I didn't watch the game. I could not bear to watch the game, thinking for sure the Royals would find a way to lose another, winnable game against a terrible team. And finally, I, risked a peek at the score to find out it was scoreless in the middle of the ninth inning. Thought for sure they'd blow that game. So I didn't pay attention for another 20 minutes. Came back. They were up 1-0 with 2 outs in the bottom of the 10th. So I turned on the game just for I think I saw 4 pitches. Lucas Urseg versus Joey Gallo. In one of those pitches, one strike away from victory. I don't know if you saw the final at bat that night, but was on 2 strikes. Ursig threw a slider, just hung it. I believe Rex Hudler's term was center cut, which is a perfect description for a pitch that's so juicy it might as well be a steak. And Joey Gallo hit it 5 miles, but like 3 feet foul. Like if that had been at Kauffman Stadium, and it would have hit the fair pull support, and the umpires would have called that a home run like they did in July. And I felt my stomach drop out of my body there for a moment, and then on the next pitch, he strikes him out. To me, that was, well, we may look back at that as just an absolutely pivotal moment in the history of the franchise, because up at that moment, it looked like for sure they were just going to blow this lead and miss the playoffs. They held on to win. The Twins lost to the Marlins. Suddenly you could breathe easy. And they did what they had to do. They swept a series in Washington. They didn't have they only won 1 out of 3 against Atlanta. But they did just enough. And the Twins didn't. I mean, that's the thing to remember, is that like, people say, oh, how can you lose to a bad team if you're a contender? Contenders lose to bad teams all the time in baseball. And the Twins proved it. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Marlins. And I'll tell you, the moment that I knew in my heart that the Royals were going to the postseason was one of the most poignant moments I've ever had, which is the Marlins game on Thursday night. After the Royals had already won, their magic number was 2. The Marlins somehow in extra innings on the road kept the Twins from scoring in the 11th and 12th inning. And then in the 13th inning, with the bases loaded and 2 outs, I have the game on. Who comes to the plate? Of all the people in the world, Griffin Conine, the son of Jeff Conine. And I've told this story a lot because I've been telling it for 25 years, but Jeff Conine is the reason I started writing about baseball. Specifically, the Royals not protecting Jeff Conine in the 1992 expansion draft 32 years ago was the moment I felt compelled to start writing on an internet message board that the Kansas City Royals did not know what the hell they were doing. And then Jeff Conine was picked by the Marlins and became a star and won a world championship, and to this day is known as Mr. Marlin. And when his son came to the plate in the top of the 13th inning with a chance to ice the game for the Marlins and help his dad's old team 32 years later, and he hit the first pitch, a bloop center, single to center with the bases loaded to drive in 2 runs. That's one of those moments that makes you just love baseball. And my life felt like it had come full circle. And at that moment, even though the magic number was about to be 1, they hadn't won the game yet, but I had just no doubt at that moment, okay, we're going to the postseason. And we might do some damage there too.
Yeah. No, I knew they had to win that game that you're talking about. I said, if they lose this game, it's over. Like they are not going to be able to come back from that. And, lo and behold, it was like scoreless. I'm like, I cannot, I don't even know how they're going to, get away from this. If they just have no ability if they don't win this game. And they got it 1-0. And I said, look, the offense still is a problem, but hopefully this took the pressure off, right? Just let the air out of it, out of the balloon. And I think it did. And it worked that way. And they played pretty free and easy. And of course the Twins continued to suck, and they got it done. And I think it was huge that they got it done on Friday so that they were able to not pitch Cole Reagans.
100%.
And they were able to just basically give a bullpen session to Lugo and then slot him in at the number 2 guy. That's the part, like, a lot of folks in here talking about their playoff optimism meter and, how optimistic they are. I would have had none in the optimism department. It would have been great that they were in the playoffs, but if we were talking about Brady Singer was going to get the call, no optimism whatsoever. The fact that they're able to get Reagans and Lugo into the 2 games they know they will play, I think that's giant, and I think that's a really bad break for the Baltimore Orioles, to be honest with you, because you'd like to think that the last place team would have to fight all the way to the end, or beyond the end, like is happening with the Mets and Braves. Right. So I think that's the most optimistic thing that, the biggest reason to be optimistic about them doing some damage once they get here was that. And I think it started with that game. They had to find a way to win that game, and they did. And now, we've got looming out there, just the potential of getting Vinnie Pasquantino back into the lineup. And I don't know how rusty he would be or not, but I think just even the threat of his bat in the lineup would change this. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but yeah, I think it was huge. And I think, we talked about what were the keys to this year in getting it done. I mean, starting pitching. And what's the key to getting it done now? That the bullpens come to life. Like that's the other reason to be optimistic right now, is because the bullpen is, been lights out. Lights out, with the exception of Carlos Hernandez. He's like the only guy that gives up a run. And he probably won't be on the 26-man roster. So, I think whatever optimism should be there for the Royals, it's never been higher than right now. Like they look the best for a playoff with Vinnie Pasquantino looming. They look like they could be the best version of themselves playing in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if Vinny returns, and we'll talk more about that. But I mean, as recently as our last show, I would have been absolutely shocked if you told me that we would be talking about the possibility of Vinnie Pasquantino being active for the wild card round, not even the ALDS, but the wild card round. I thought, based on the timeline, I thought the best case scenario was he'd be ready for the ALCS, maybe the division series in some sort of pinch hitting type role. And that's why after the those two moments I talked about. I mean, the happiest, I think, moment of the week was seeing the Twitter video of Vinnie Pasquantino taking batting practice and hitting home runs. Like, you can't, it's one thing to take batting practice off a tee, but facing live pitching with enough exit velo to get to the seats means he's pretty close. If you're just going to ask him to DH, which is presumably what he will do, if he doesn't have to field because the broken finger is on his glove hand, and I don't think the Royals want to take any chance having him catch 90 mile an hour fastballs from Bobby Witt on a throw to first base. But if all he's being asked to do is hit, he's hitting. I mean, he's already hitting, right? So how much more does he need to show in order to be ready? I think all he needs to show is that the next day, his thumb doesn't swell up like a watermelon, and that he's able to do it 3 days in a row. And frankly, even if he's only able to pinch hit, even if he's only able to bat once, he would still be a huge asset on the team. So that there's, yes, the optimism of having the Royals, the best version of themselves, is definitely there. The other thing, though, for me is that as stressed as I was about making the playoffs, because for the Royals to have been as close as they were, by whatever playoff odds you want to choose, whether it was 99%, 98%, whatever, if they to be that close and not make it would have left a bad taste in the mouth, no matter how magical the rest of the year was. But getting to this point now, we're playing with house money. Like, everything from this point, I want them to win. I'll be unhappy if they lose, but no matter what happened, they could be eliminated 72 hours from right now. The Royals could be on a flight home, having been swept in the wild card round. And if they do, they had a great year. It was a blast. We had so much fun. They have nothing to hide their, heads in shame about. Great. Everything from this point is all good. So I think I'm actually going to be considerably less stressed watching the next couple of playoff games than I was during that losing streak and into the National Series. So there's that part of it. That this is, to me, is going to be hopefully just fun, and they have nothing. They're playing loose and easy now. They're the underdog, right? The Tigers are a great story, but they won't see the Tigers unless they meet in the ALCS, which would be an amazing series. But their next two rounds, they're playing the Orioles. If they win, they play the Yankees. I'm pretty sure that's confirmed now. I had it wrong. I didn't realize they don't reseed in the new format anymore. So a Royals Yankees series. We'll talk more about that later. But yes, please. Yes, I was 5 years old the last time these two teams met, and yes, I would like. Maybe that's a more difficult matchup than the Guardians. Although I've been thinking about it, and I actually think I'd rather play the Yankees in the next round than the Guardians anyway. And we can talk about that if we have time. But this is all house money at this point. And then finally, like you said, the bullpen is good now. Whatever the issues are with the offense, and there are some major issues there, the Royals coming into today, when they threw 4 shutout innings, they had, I believe, what was that, a 2.90 ERA in the month of September. That's the bullpen ERA was 7th in the major leagues in September in ERA, 2nd in the major leagues behind only the Guardians in strikeout to walk ratio at 3.92. They've given up the second fewest walks, their bullpen, of any team in baseball in September, the second fewest home runs of any team in September. This bullpen is coming together at the absolutely perfect time. Daniel Lynch threw 17 innings in September out of the bullpen. 17 and a third, scoreless innings. Angel Serpa came back up having, they sent him to AAA and they had him tweak a few things with his delivery. You could see it today. He was adjusting his pace and tempo and almost quick pitching. He was trying to throw off the hitter's timing, almost like a Johnny Cueto type motion. And coming into today, he had faced 19 batters since he got called up and allowed 1 base runner. Right today, he gave up, I think, 2 hits and a walk in 2/3 of an inning. But he looks like early season Angel Serpa, who was a good pitcher, especially if he's going to be the 4th or 5th guy in your bullpen. Bubic has been amazing since he came back. Lucas Erceg, was saved every game in the National Series. The first time a Royals pitcher had done that, I think, since Kelvin Herrera in 2017. They have bullpen weapons to go with their rotation. And for all the worry about innings totals and, these guys were, blowing through their innings, their all-time innings high in Lugo and Reagan's. Lugo had a 2.28 ERA in the month of September. Reagan's had a 1.08 ERA in the month of September. All right. There's a reason why the Royals, actually managed to win 11 games this month, despite their offense going into a deep freeze. The pitching staff looks good. It's all going to be about the offense, the next, this next series and the month of October in general.
Yeah. Let's get into that here in a second. As we tell you, first of all, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Get your seal coating done now before the weather turns cold. Weekends are booking up fast. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Feel your best every day with Restore Hyper Wellness. Cutting-edge treatments like IV therapy, cryotherapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, NAD, IM shots, and a variety of skin health services designed to help you recover like the pros. Boost energy, reduce stress, and enhance well-being. It's perfect for athletes, busy professionals, and anyone looking to improve health. First-time IV therapy is just $99 when you mention Petro. That's right, mention my name, Petro, and your first IV therapy is just $99. Visit Restore Hyper Wellness in Zona Rosa or Hawthorne Plaza at 119th and Row. Embrace a healthier, happier you. All right, let's get into it, Rany. What happened to the offense, and is there any chance it can bounce back and be better beyond just Vinnie Pasquantino coming back being red hot?
There's a reason why I'll take Vinny back with half a thumb over the alternatives. So before today, Soren, the Royals had scored 16 runs in their last 10 games. The last time the Royals had scored fewer than 16 runs in any 10-game stretch was 1981. Like, this was historically bad, right? They scored, one run in the entire Giants series. They managed to score 10 runs in 2 games against the Nationals. And then, in the first 2 Braves games, they scored, one combined run. They had hit 1 home run in a 10-game stretch. They got 2 today. So maybe, they're coming out of it at the perfect time. But, the offense for the month of September, get this, but not counting today. I don't have today's updated numbers, but today, even with the 2 home runs, they only had 5 hits. I think they got on base 8 times in 33 plate appearances. So their numbers aren't going to change much. Their OPS as a team for the month of September was 574. Okay, for the month, they had a 276 on base and a 298 slug for the whole team in September. Mm-hmm. In the history of the Kansas City Royals, they have had a lower OPS than that one time in the entire history of the franchise. That was June of 2018, which you may recall was a year they lost 104 games.
Right.
And in June of 2018, they went 5-21. So the fact that they actually went, I want to say 11-14 this month. Somebody can check me on that, but something close to that is, a testament to how good the pitching has been. But make no mistake, the offense has been horrible. And I mean, the thing is, it's not just one person. I mean, Bobby, by his standards, was a slump, but it was a good month, by mortal standards. Not counting today, he had an 830 OPS. Okay, pretty good. The second highest OPS. So Michael Massey hit a home run today. So his OPS was around 680 for the month. No one else on the entire team had an OPS of higher than 636. That was Adam Frazier, who, by the way, went 4 for 25, but had a triple and a homer. So he had a 636 OPS, which is, horrible. That was the third best on the team. Everybody was terrible. I mean, Salvi had a 239 batting average, 297 OBP, 326 slugging. He badly needed a couple of days off. They give him today off. I wish they'd given him yesterday off too, but hopefully 2 days of rest, maybe he'll wake up. But MJ Melendez before today, 8 for 52, No homers. MJ Melendez, the one thing he wanted to do is hit home runs. No homers. Hunter Renfroe did hit 3 home runs, his 3rd home run of the month today. He went 9 for 51 with 1 walk. Right? Maikel Garcia, 10 for 62. Freddie Fermin, let's see, what did he do today? He got a hit today, so 8 for 52. I mean, just I could go on and on. It was, Paul DeYoung, 5 for 37. All 5 hits were singles. Nobody hit the whole month. So what happens in October is really going to be a kind of a testament to how important recent history is versus full season sample sizes. The good news is there really is no correlation between how a team plays down the stretch and how they play in October. It really is sometimes like flipping a switch. A team that is terrible down the stretch, just you think, well, they're backing into the postseason or whatever that means, and then they come out in October and immediately start winning. So that's the good news. Now, of course, if somebody's playing hurt and there's a reason why they're not playing well, then that's different. But I see no reason to think that the guys who were batting in September were playing at less than 100%. The only guy who was hurt was Vinny, and he didn't play. And yeah, his absence hurt them a lot. But if he's back, terrific. So I don't want to sugarcoat it. They were as bad in September as they have ever been offensively. And with having said that, they were still in they had a 440 win percentage. It's not terrible because the pitching was that good. And there's no reason to think they will continue to hit that badly once the lights turn on Tuesday.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any reason to think they're going to hit that much better either. Right? Like, people are talking about, well, Salvi looks like he's sucking wind. Here, Cotman talked about that. Freddie Fermin, they're talking about how Freddie Fermin has been bad coming down the stretch. What gives me hope is Vinnie Pasquantino. That's what gives me hope, right? Because I think that's what they've been missing. And it's why I've said it would, when I would argue with Danny Clinkscale on the radio show about like whether or not it would be an epic collapse. And I'm like, it won't be an epic collapse because I can tell you why this is happening.
Right.
Because one of their key cogs got hurt and they're just not a lineup that can miss that. If he doesn't come back, could they win a wild card series against the Orioles? Yes, because the Orioles pitching has been a problem. So yes, they can win it. But if he is back, it starts to get a lot. I can see a much easier path to get there. But they're going to have to. I think if they beat the Orioles with no offense, they'd win like 2-1, lose, 9-1, and then win 2-1. Right, like that. That's how the series would go. But because I don't see them scoring a ton of runs unless Vinnie Pasquantino's back, and then I think you might be shocked that the lineup all of a sudden goes back to being a 5-run-a-game lineup.
Yeah, no. Vinny's return would be huge. And remember, when we talked about potential playoff opponents, a week or maybe 2 weeks ago, I said at the time, I'm like, I think Baltimore is probably the easier matchup, but Camden Yards was such a terrible fit for the Royals because that ballpark is good for left-handed power, but really bad for right-handed power. And without Vinny, the Royals had no left-handed power, right? They have Michael Massey. And my hope is Massey will be able to play all 3 games. With his back, maybe he'll get one of those 3 off. If the Orioles start a lefty, although it does not appear they will. But MJ's lost right now. He's back to being like, I have no idea what's going on with his swing. And my concern was simply they weren't going to have any left-handed power hitters in the lineup. Well, if Vinny is back, that changes the equation quite a bit. So particularly with the ballpark that we're talking about here, it's really hard to overstate just how important it is to have Vinny in the lineup. And I mean, look, the Royals aren't going to, promise anything, but like certainly reading the tea leaves, it feels to me like he's going to be on the roster. Whether he'll be able to start all 3 games, I don't know. Whether he'll be limited to maybe just pinch hitting or a couple of bats, maybe. But I think he's going to be on the roster. And it's a bone injury. This is not a soft tissue injury. So, I don't see a reason why this would potentially complicate things if he has like a setback. Worst case scenario, well, if he gets hurt again and he can't play well, he wasn't playing anyway. and he should be good for spring training regardless. So like, it's worth taking a small risk that maybe you set back his recovery a little bit if he aggravates the injury, because without him, the odds that you're going to be still playing 3 days later are pretty slim. So, but with him in there and with this pitching, and we should talk a little bit about the matchup itself in the Orioles, but like with the Orioles pitching in the state that it's in right now, Grayson Rodriguez, who probably would have started in the series, is out for the year. They've announced he's not going to be able to make it back from an injury. I feel fairly optimistic this is a good matchup for the Royals.
Yeah, no, I do too. I mean, I think this is what we all wanted, and I don't think we thought it was a possibility, right? But once the Tigers got there, I didn't. I like the White Sox, and we had somebody who mentioned, it's mad props for the White Sox for showing up and taking the Tigers out, because I think this is by far the better matchup to have with the Orioles. Doesn't mean they're going to win, but I think it's just the better matchup for them to have. And I think I'd already put them in that they were going to be in there in the bottom one and going to Houston. I got a buddy. Yeah. I think a friend of mine may have bought a ticket to Houston.
Well, I mean, think about it. They had to win today, the Royals, and the White Sox had to win. I had Houston penciled in, and did not really expect this. And there is a part of me, like I would enjoy beating Houston more than I would enjoy beating Baltimore personally. Some of that's because of Houston, the Astros specific history. Part of it is, the idea of being the first team to really knock the bad boys off the block before the LCS round in like 8 years. Some of it's because I went to college in Baltimore and I have fond memories of the Orioles, and I don't have anything against them. But all's fair in love and war, and this is the better matchup for us. The big thing is, like, the Astros have multiple starting pitchers who scare me. The Orioles have one, right? Corbin Burns is a legitimate ace. You could argue for the last 5 years, he's one of the 5 best pitchers in baseball at the very least. I mean, dude was great this year, and you could argue it was an off year for him. I mean, 3 years ago, he led the National League in ERA, won the Cy Young Award. His ERA is the last 5 years: 2.11, 2.43, 2.94, 3.39, 2.92 this year. Like, that's an ace. Is he better than Cole Reagans right now at this exact moment? I would just say it's a wash. Like, they're different. One's lefty, one's righty. Corbin's got better command, and Reagans has more power stuff, more strikeout stuff. They're comparable. But the Orioles, like, if the Royals lose game 1, then okay, that's a problem. But they should have the starting pitcher advantage at games 2 and 3. The Orioles lose game 1, like, suddenly the Royals have a huge advantage here, because game 2, they have not announced their starter after game 1, but I would assume the Orioles would go with Zach Eflin, who is sort of, a 90% version of Seth Lugo. Excellent command, throws tons of strikes, doesn't beat himself, but Lugo is just a little bit better right now. I don't think Eflin has a pitch that's comparable to Lugo's curveball. He's just not as good as Seth Lugo. And then I don't even know who their third starter would be. Maybe Dean Kramer. That seems like the most likely person. Albert Suarez, I think, started today, so he wouldn't be the starter. And I mean, Dean Kramer is like, he's Alec Marsh, I guess. You could describe him as a good number 5 starter, maybe number 4 starter, but like, I'm not really worried about the starting pitcher. And then their bullpen, I mean, they've got a lot of good pitchers, but I'm not sure I don't think their best reliever would be like one of the Guardians' 4 best relievers. So, again, the way that the Royals bullpen is rounding into shape right now, I might argue the Royals have a better bullpen right now and a starting pitcher advantage in games 2 and 3. Now, the Royals have a better offense, of course. Like, there's a reason why they won more games than the Royals. But I will point out, the Royals had a better run differential than the Orioles this year, plus 91 to plus 87. So if you look at the standings, you're like, well, the Orioles, I mean, they're the 4 seed. They have the home field advantage. But this is not an imbalance, even if you just look at, the overall team stats, let alone the actual individual matchups. I think this is a good matchup for Kansas City.
The Orioles won the series 4-2, but 2 of the wins, they're both the wins in the first series, April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, were walk-offs. So
yeah, I think they were off of Will Smith, if I recall, right? So, who's not on the roster. Oh, that's something I should point out. Like I told you how that the Royals had the 7th best bullpen ERA in September. Chris Stratton and James MacArthur gave up 13 hits, 6 walks, and 9 runs in 6 innings in September. Neither of them are on the active roster. Like if you just look at the guys who are on the current active roster, the Royals bullpen is as good as anybody in baseball in September. That doesn't mean they will be in October, but we've seen so many teams start a year with a terrible bullpen, build it on the fly, and then come October, they're ready to go. And I think the Royals are in a good spot for that.
I'd have to go back and look, but I know they were through, I think, about 20 some odd innings, and the only guy who'd given up a run out of the bullpen was Carlos Hernandez. He'd given up 3. So the bullpen has been lights out, and I think that's, like I said, that plus the chance for Vinnie Pasquantino to come back. This truly would be and you have Tommy Pham. I know there's a big debate going on in the chat room right now about whether or not Tommy Pham should bat leadoff or not, that he's only got a 250 on base since being with the Royals. He does see pitches, is for the season on base. I mean, I don't know, you're going to play the hot hand, or you're going to play who traditionally gets on base. He traditionally gets on base more than anyone else that you could put up there. Yeah, because you're not going to put Bobby Witt in there, and you're not going to put Salvador Perez in there. So he's probably the likely guy to remain in that spot. But this will be the best version of the Royals. And you mentioned they look every bit the part of what the Orioles have been. So I think there's a lot of reason for optimism. Let me ask this. You are a medical doctor. Like, what do you think of Vinny being back this quick? I know that's not your expertise is dermatology. It's not broken bones. You're not an orthopedic surgeon or anything like that, but you've got to have at least more of a working knowledge than most of us boobs out here. Like, what do you think of him being back this quick?
I'm impressed. I mean, look,
can it work? Can he actually hold a bat? Can he actually swing it? I heard he hit a home run today in the BP he took. Can he? I mean, can it actually work?
It comes down to pain tolerance. I'm impressed the bone has healed this quickly, right? Like he had surgery, I believe it was September 3rd. Like it will be exactly 4 weeks to the day from the day he had surgery until game 1 of the wild card round. I would not have expected that bone to heal in 4 weeks, but like I said, bones are bones. They're not soft tissues, right? It's like if the bone is healed to the point where he can swing the bat, and he was hitting home runs in batting practice 23 days after surgery. And, and if he wakes up the next morning and there isn't a ton of inflammation and it's not swollen up and he can still swing the bat the next day, this seems to me like it's one of those injuries where the recovery is simply dependent on the results, the results and the pain tolerance. If he can swing without pain. Now, the first time, like I have no doubt the Orioles are going to pitch him inside, right? Like the first time he gets jammed and breaks his bat, it will be telling. But I'm simultaneously surprised, and yet, like, I believe it. I don't think they're blowing smoke. If anybody who saw, the interview in the clubhouse when they were celebrating, when Joel Goldberg asked him about the timetable, and you could see Vinny could not, he was under strict orders not to divulge too much, but you could see the look on his face, the smile that he was trying to hold back. Nobody's that good an actor. Like, I think he legitimately believed that he would be back for the wild card round, and he was almost giddy about it, that he'd be able to contribute. So if he can manage the pain, and he's already hitting the ball for power, this is not, and also the bone he broke, it's not like it's not one of the hand bones, like the hammock bone you hear frequently. That's a bone that sometimes gets broken when a guy gets hit by a pitch. And that one, even after you come back, the power takes a long time to return because that's one of the bones in the hand. The thumb itself, I don't think that I'm too worried that he's going to have trouble hitting for power, even if the bone is like still a little bit sore. I think he'll still be able to swing for power. So I'm optimistic that he can do some damage.
I'm optimistic that he can do some damage as well. And I also think there's a small chance that basically he's getting ready for the next round. That they're not quite ready. I don't know what to expect. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea what to expect, but I just know he's getting close, with the things that he's doing. And I think that will be huge. Let's talk a little bit about real quick, the 26-man roster, what we think it'll be. what are you looking for on that front?
So the first thing you got to do is like figure out what's the breakdown of hitters versus pitchers, right? And currently with the 28-man roster they've had for September, they have a 15-13 split, which is I like the fact that I have 15 hitters on the active roster. It's 6 guys on the bench. It gives you the luxury of having a pinch runner in Dairon Blanco. And given how weak the lineup is, you have lots of bench options. So, for instance, in the 9th inning against the Nationals, you can bring in Kyle Isbell as a pinch hitter and have him bunt, and then have Adam Frazier pinch it because he's a contact guy with a run on third, and he hits a single to give the Royals a lead. So they have a lot of bench players. Now, with a 26-man roster, you're thinking, okay, are they going to lose a hitter? They might, but honestly, you can change your roster after each round. So you only need a roster for 3 days. So you only need 3 starting pitchers, which, it's pretty simple. Just take the 2 starting pitchers out of your roster. Now, of course, you can move those guys to the bullpen. And the Royals have already indicated that Brady Singer will almost certainly work out of the bullpen, which I think is fine. I think that's a good idea. I had talked about using Alec Marsh as a bullpen weapon. We never did get the chance to see him work out of the bullpen in September. He started today's game, obviously. So I if I were a betting man, I suspect of the 20 guys on the roster right now, there's 15 hitters, 13 pitchers. I think they can get away with removing 2 pitchers from the roster. I think Alec Marsh will not be on the roster. And then one other pitcher. To me, the guy you remove is probably going to be Carlos Hernandez. It's possible Michael Lorenzen could be that guy, but I think they used Lorenzen out of the bullpen yesterday. He pitched well. He obviously has, the durability to go multiple innings. Keep in mind, in the playoffs, the gift runner and extra innings goes away, which is a good thing, but it also, you have to account for the possibility of a game going 12, 13, 14 innings. You're not getting easy runs in the 10th inning anymore. So, you have Singer, but if you're going to use Singer, and they specifically said his effectiveness against right-handed hitters, which I'd like to hear, that they actually see him as a weapon, not just a guy, a long reliever that you use, but actually a guy you could use to get right-handed hitters out in a key situation. But then you probably want to have a long man. So I'm guessing Lorenzen's on the roster. I'm guessing, Carlos Hernandez, look, he pitched genuinely well in September. I'm hopeful that this might be a turning point for him for the future for next year. But I'm a little bit nervous about having him on the roster. I think John Schreiber, I'm also nervous about, but he at least has a role as a ground ball guy. He pitched pretty well in September. And Urseg obviously is your closer. You have Bubic and Lynch, who have been fantastic. I think Serpa's probably earned a spot. Sam Long has been kind of solid all year. So I think Marsh and Carlos Hernandez are the guys who are gone, but the other 26 guys that are on the roster right now will be your playoff roster, with the obvious caveat that if Vinny comes back, you're taking a hitter off the roster. And I suspect that would be Robbie Grossman, because Tommy Pham has been playing almost every day, and I think that I don't see them taking him out from an everyday role into not on the roster at all. And Yuli Gurriel can play first base, which is important because I think Pasquantino, if he does come back, will be strictly a DH. Now, Salvador Perez can and probably should play first base a fair amount, because I'd rather have Freddie Fermin's defense behind the plate. The upgrade from Freddie Fermin to Yuli Gurriel offensively is debatable. And Fermin definitely, will be better behind the plate. And I think Salvi would be better than Gurriel at first base. But you have Gurriel. You could start Salvi. If you start Salvi at catcher, you need a first baseman. And I think that's Gurriel. So my guess is Robbie Grossman would be the odd man out in that situation. But otherwise, it seems pretty straightforward to me. 15 hitters, 11 pitchers, and they're ready to go.
Yeah, no, I think that is probably the route that they will go as well. And I think you make an important point about, no more ghost runners. Like, you might have to go deep and take a lot of pitches and, a lot of pitchers there. So you got to be ready for that. But, and everybody's going to empty the clip on that, because it's, we'll worry about tomorrow. Each one of these games is going to be so important for them. I think that's going to be a huge factor in this, is like that we're going to get to see what Matt Quatraro looks like as a playoff manager too. Like, I think that's exciting for sure. We're always brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. For more than 30 years, they've been Kansas City's best, handling all parking lot problems, handling any and all parking lot problems for you. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized, full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems? They've been making them disappear in KC since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keep your lot as safe as possible. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. All right, Rany, let's talk about the keys to this series, the matchups. What do you like? Where do the Royals have advantages, disadvantages? What do you think about how they measure up against Baltimore? I mentioned Baltimore won 4 out of 6. 2 of them, though, were walk-off wins. A couple of them were thrown away by the bullpen. Will Smith at that time having his struggles. I assume you have some tasty matchups that you like.
I mean, it's not even specific like pitcher versus hitter matchups. It's just like the players that like really can do damage against the Royals. One of the overall matchups I'm really looking at is the fact that Cole Reagans is a lefty, which is, I think, a good thing because so much of the Orioles' power is left-handed. Right, Gunnar Henderson, left-handed. Colton Cowser with 24 home runs, left-handed. Cedric Mullins, left-handed. Ryan O'Hearn, our old buddy, Ryan O'Hearn, left-handed. Anthony Santander, who hit 44 home runs. He's a switch hitter. Rutschman's a switch hitter. But I feel like the opportunity to use Reagans in the first in game 1 against a lineup that's got a lot of lefties. So either some of those guys are going to be benched or he's going to have the platoon advantage. May hopefully be the deciding advantage against Corbin Burns being the ace on the other side. Right. Like I think Cole Reagans on the Tuesday game where the Royals won an extra innings against the Nationals. If he gives up 1 run in that game, we lose. Like he's with the Royals offense as cold as it's ever been. He threw 6 shutout innings. He looks absolutely like an ace. I am really excited for the idea that Cole Reagans introduces himself on a national stage on Tuesday as like this man's a legitimate number 1 starter against a really good Orioles offense. But again, the lefty in that ballpark where it's hard to hit home runs to left field. So, you start the right-handers, and you might hit a 400 or 390 foot ball to left center and it's caught at the warning track. So Cole Reagans to me is just an absolute key because that's a chance to steal game 1. And like I said, I think winning game 1 is more important for the Orioles than it is for the Royals because I think we have a pitching advantage the rest of the way. So to me, that's a really big thing. Beyond that, I mean, it's, whoever's coming out of that bullpen, but especially the best reliever they probably have is Keegan Aiken, who's a lefty, and him against Bobby Witt and Salvi Perez in the late innings, like in a close game. I think that could decide a game as well.
You earlier in the year were saying you didn't want to be like if the playoffs came around, you didn't want to be in Camden Yards.
Yeah, exactly. I was saying, but that's because we thought Vinny was out, right? And we didn't have any left-hand power. And so Vinny coming back makes me feel a lot better. But this is a way to turn that advantage against the Orioles by having the left-handed starter. Because I don't think the Orioles are going to start a lefty. Like they could start Cade Povich, but I mean he would get a 5.20 ERA this year. I don't see a rationale. They do have some lefties in the bullpen, but we have Cole Reagans. He's starting game 1. If we can, get that game in the win column, they are in trouble. So I really feel like Cole Reagans against all their lefties is going to be a really, really fun little wrinkle in the series.
Do you like Matt Quatraro as a manager?
Look, he's the best tactical manager the Royals have had in my adult life. It's not close. He's not everything he's done I agree with, but I'm pretty confident saying everything he's done has had a reason behind it. And I think that sounds pretty basic, but look, that's the first time I could say that about a Royals manager in a long, long time. And I mean, taking nothing away from Brandon Hyde, who, was like Quatraro was the manager at the beginning of this rebuild for the Orioles and lost like 110 games or something in his first year, 108. And, was, good enough to stick around and reap the benefits and has been a very good manager. But, and I don't know how good he is tactically, but right now I don't see Quatraro being a relative detriment to any manager he goes up against. Maybe other managers are just as good, but I have a feeling that he has thought through all the potential scenarios here. He's built a bench within the confines of how good the offense is, which is not very good, but he's built a bench where everybody has a role. I mean, as much as Adam Frazier and Garrett Hampson drive me nuts sometimes, they have a role. We saw that with Adam Frazier, who had probably the most important hit of the season, which was a tie game 9th inning with men on second and third, and came off the bench as a pinch hitter. And was brought in because he's a contact guy and came through with a single to score 2 runs. So I think everybody on the bench is going to have their role. Dairon Blanco has been a huge weapon all season. He's scored more runs and stolen more bases as a pinch runner than any player in Royals history in a season. So I have a lot of faith in Couturo.
Yeah, I do too. And I think he's got a lot of experience down with the Rays of handling, not being the guy, but having been around the decisions and in the conversations about what to do. That I think he should be. This should be second nature for him, right? Like, I mean, he's been through a lot of playoff series. He knows how they went about putting it together. I think they may have the advantage, right, manager wise. That I think this is what all the numbers and everything are for, and I think he should be, I don't worry about any move that he's going to make. I know he's not going to just like, oh, I got a hunch, or he's not going to, Michael Wacha's not going to come into the game, in relief, right? Like, I think they'll get. I think they have been. Like, can you think of any like just blatant mistakes? I know people don't like how much Hampson plays and they don't like how much Frazier makes, but if they're on the roster, they're going to get used. Can you think of any just flat out mistakes that the guys made this year?
The thing is, even what I thought were mistakes maybe at the time, like, have been either corrected or was in retrospect part of a greater plan. For instance, the way that they were not using Chris Bubich, as much as I thought they should early on. And, at first it was frustrating. And then it seemed like maybe it was so consistently like they never used him with less than 2 or 3 days rest that it made me think, okay, maybe there is a plan here that they're just being extremely conservative and they'll ramp it up in September. And then lo and behold, September came in. Yeah, Chris Bubich is pitching now, sometimes on back-to-back days. So, even the things that I didn't agree with or didn't understand, I understand more now. I mean, Seth Lugo started yesterday. At first, that seemed really strange because, like, is he actually going to start in the wild card round? And, I speculated, and I still think there's a strategy where if you win game 1, you hold Seth Lugo back for game 3, hoping that you don't use him, and then he can start game 1 of the League Division Series. But more likely, it was, they ended up using him for 2 innings, like 30 pitches. It was a bullpen session. He will be starting on 3 days rest, which is just from a routine standpoint. I don't think he'll be fatigued because he only threw 30 pitches. But it will be just a different routine for him. But they said, they indicated it like he didn't want to sit too long between starts. Like, this was a way for him to get out there. So, like, they had a plan. They knew what they were doing. Even if I don't agree with it, I'm not in a position where I'm sitting to say they don't know what they're doing. I just want to make sure they have a plan, and they do. So I'm fine with it.
I listen. I talked to somebody. I said, "Look, why is his name still in there that he's going to start?" And they're like, "Hey, he's not going to be out there long." And so, I mean, you brought it up. I mean, that's what he wanted to do. I think you want to keep him sharp, in this situation. And if that's what he thinks is best to keep him sharp, then you let him go do it. But it was just basically an extra bullpen session. That's all it was. I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm comfortable with the way they used him, and I have a lot of faith that Couturo is not going to make, that if there's going to be a managerial mistake in the series, that's not going to be on our side. Now, having said that, like, let's not overstate the importance of a manager's technical ability, because famously, this is the 10th anniversary of the 2014 ALCS. And the headline, the chess master versus the dunce, and the dunce swept the chess master. So there's more to being a good manager than simply pushing the right buttons. And sometimes the buttons don't look like the right buttons than they are, or you push the wrong button, it works anyway. So the team that plays better is probably going to win. But at least I feel confident that we're not likely to have a huge managerial blunder the way the chess master, Buck Showalter, had 2 years after he played the Royals, when he kept Zach Britton, who might have been the best closer in baseball, in the bullpen, in the bullpen, not actually on the mound, for the entire game until it was blown by a starter in the 11th inning, in a wild card double elimination game. I don't think Quintero is going to save Lucas Erceg in a tie game. We've seen him use his closer, his best pitcher in tie games, since they got him. So, to me, that's the most common mistake a manager makes, is not using his best relievers in clutch situations because they're not quote unquote save situations.
Yeah.
And you don't see that as much as you used to even 5 years ago. Like I said, Buck Showalter, I think it was 2016 he did that. But specifically with Erceg, we have not seen Quintero do that at all. So I'm hopeful in a close game, if it's tied, whatever, on the road, he's not going to wait for a save situation. If the Royals need, if the bottom of the 10th inning is tied, he'll go to Erceg. And so I feel good about that.
Yeah, so we would say the first pitching matchup, Burns against Reagan's push.
Yeah.
Are you? I think we're being homers with that.
I think maybe, but if it is an advantage, it's a very small one. Burns has the longer track record, no question, right? Longer track record than Reagan's does. But for the year and a half that since Reagan's joined the Kansas City Royals, right, and a year and a half is a fairly decent track record for a pitcher. His ERA is 3 and his FIP is 285. Right over this year, we'll say Burns was at 292 ERA, 355 FIP. Right, he's actually given up. He's more home run prone than Reagan. Some of that is the ballpark, maybe, right? Because again, he's a right-handed pitcher, and left-handed hitters can hit power in Baltimore. But guess what? We're going to be playing in Baltimore, and we have, if Vinny comes back, you have Vinny and Michael Massey, maybe MJ, maybe if you want my wild prediction for something that happens in this series, we're going to just do something wild. It's going to be Kyle Isbell hits a key home run. You want the random, who's the random dude? It's, to me, I'm all about Kyle Isbell hitting one into the right field seats and just like the stunned silent crowd in Baltimore. Yeah. The point is that Burns does give up home runs.
Yeah. People in the chat room were talking about Sid Breams and, the guys that end up having big days. What's his name? The Cubs manager.
David Ross.
No. He went from the Brewers to the Cubs. Craig Counsell.
Craig Counsell. Well, Craig Counsell, right. They've had multiple managers do stuff like that, yes.
Craig Counsell, like playoff hero. I'm okay with calling it a push. It's close enough to call it a push. But I think the Royals have the advantage the next two starters. Right? Bullpen, you give the advantage to?
I mean, I think at the very least it's a push. I think the Orioles bullpen is they don't have. It's not the Guardians where they have a dominant Class A and then several other guys. They have good relievers. Keegan Aiken is a good reliever, but there's nobody in that bullpen is just like lights out, forget about it. One run in the 9th inning and we're doomed. And I mean, the best pitcher on both teams, the best reliever, I think you can make a strong case for Erceg. And now some of that is recency bias because he's been so much better since the trade than he was after. But some of that's because he stopped walking batters. And that isn't that in a small sample size has weight. Like if a guy whose walk rate suddenly drops, that's not usually a fluke. If you stop giving up hits for a while, that could just be luck with balls in play. But walk rate, if you start you're throwing more strikes, and that's a repeatable thing. So I think the Royals have the best reliever in the series. But it's a best of 3. Anything can happen. But I feel confident that we have at least as good a bullpen as they do.
The lineup is Baltimore.
Yeah, obviously that's their big advantage, and that's why they probably, I don't know what the experts are saying, but the betting lines probably indicate that they're favored a little bit. They have home field and they have the better lineup, and especially with power, right? Like in terms of runs scored, I think we were fourth. They were 4th in the league, and we were 6th. But the Royals being 6th in the league is due to being lucky for the season as a whole with runners in scoring position. That they regressed a lot in September, but they still, they were 8th in on base and 6th in slugging. So it's kind of around, they were around league average in terms of offense. But the Orioles, I believe did they lead the league in home runs? I could look it up here.
Yeah, you look that up because I'm trying to give you the series.
Second. They were second in the league. They were first in slugging average. The Orioles had the most power in the American League. 235 home runs, I believe, counting the 2 today. So, and look, all these small advantages you have in the bullpen and the starting rotation, like the team that hits more home runs wins something like 90% of playoff games are won by the team that hits more home runs. Right? Ball go far, team go far. And the Orioles had 235. I think the Royals with their 2 today ended up with like 170, which, by Royal standards, not bad, right? I mean, Bobby hit 32, and Salvi hit 27. Now, Vinny's 19 are a big part of that, so hopefully he's back. But, if you want to look big picture, what's the key to the series is simply limiting the Orioles, home run total and getting a couple of big flies ourselves.
The Baltimore Orioles are minus 162 in game one. Royals plus 136. And to win the series, Baltimore is minus 172.
Yeah. See, again, I'm not recommending anybody bet to me, but that disparity, that lopsidedness, I don't think it's warranted. They have home field. And, they are playing somewhat better going into the postseason than the Royals are. But September performance has just historically does not have a lot of correlation with October success. And again, the Royals have a better run differential than the Orioles. Right? If Vinny is back, I think that this is, 55-45 at best for Baltimore. And that's mainly because of home field.
Yeah, I think home field matters.
Yeah, it does, but it doesn't. It's not to that.
I think last at bat matters too.
Right. Well, that's a big part of home field, I think.
Well, I think there's also just the crowd and the energy.
Sure, there is, but it's not to that degree, right? So
no, I would agree, and I think the Royals did better on the road coming down the stretch. I think is that right? They were 41-40. It was all said.
Yeah, I mean, if you extend not just September, but if you actually look at like since the All-Star break or whatever, I think the Royals have a better record since the All-Star break than the Royals do. Than the Orioles do. They are. The
Orioles coming into the weekend, I looked this up. I think we're 30-33.
They're 30. They won today, so they finished 33-33 after the All-Star break. So they're 500. The Royals are 34-31. Right. So again, if all you do is focus on September, it doesn't look good, but like that's not how it works. And in August, the Royals, the Royals hit 15 home runs in all of September. They hit 41 homers in August. Right. And in July, Bobby Witt was about as hot as any, player in baseball's been in well, at least from batting average standpoint in, 20 years or something. So I just feel like it's easy to look at how poor the offense was in September and have despair. And I'm just telling you, that's not how the playoffs work. Everything resets. And there's going to be some rando who has a huge hit and becomes a, cult hero. Could be on either team. But the point is Freddie Fermin might go deep. All right. Think about it. Alcides, the last time these two teams played, Alcides Escobar hit a home run in Baltimore. Right. So, and Alcides, Michael Garcia has, twice as many home runs as Alcides hit that. I think Alcides had like 4 home runs during the season and hit one in a game in Baltimore. So, if you're on a major league roster, you can do damage. And somebody's going to do damage that we don't expect in the series.
All right, let's finish with this. What's your prediction for the series?
Soren, it wouldn't be me if I didn't predict that the Royals win this series in 3. They're going to win in 3. It's going to be a good series. And fortunately, Baltimore, can look back at previous rounds of playoff series against Kansas City, like the AFC Championship. No, wait a minute. The 2014 ALC. No, sorry. I don't think they've beaten Kansas City. I just want to finish with this. The Kansas City Royals have won 8 of their 9 last playoff series. The Orioles have lost 8 straight playoff games and 5 of the last 6 playoff series, including the one series between these two teams in 2014. So you can decide for yourself how much a series played in 2014 has an impact today, given that I believe the only player on either team who was active for that was Salvador Perez. But Salvador Perez is still there. And I think the Royals match up really well on the pitching side. And, in that, ballpark, if they can just keep the Orioles from just, and like you said, they'll probably win. They'll probably score in the one game that Baltimore wins. They probably will hit 4 bombs and
Right.
score 9 runs, right? But if they can just keep them off the board in the other games, I think in the late innings, they might actually have an advantage, both because the Royals have a slightly better bullpen right at this point in time, and because I trust that Matt Quatrero will find a way to squeeze out a run with that, using his bench. Dairon Blanco coming in and scoring a pivotal run that could decide the series. So I'm going to say Royals in 3, and we're going to be talking in a few days about the Royals and the New York Yankees in a best of 5, just like old times.
I will pick the Orioles in 3. I don't like it, and I definitely think it could go. I think the Royals could go win-win and move right on because of the things you're talking about. But I think the odds makers have it the way they have it for a reason. So they see it being weighted that way. So I'll take the Orioles, I guess, but I wouldn't bet it. I definitely wouldn't lay those odds with it. I think you either bet the Royals or you don't play it because I think the teams are closer than those numbers suggest. So I think that's but there's something there that the odds makers like to put the number where they put it. I've had a lot of people asking here in the chat room, are we going to do extra pods? We are going to do extra pods. That is the plan. In fact, we're hopeful. We got to see. I'm juggling a number of different things. In fact, I've got a million texts right now between Sam McDowell and Jeff Chadilla for our football podcasts that are going on because Sam McDowell, the columnist for the Kansas City Star, is maybe traveling for the baseball. So there's a lot of balls in the air. I don't want to commit to exactly when we will do them, but yes, we will be doing extra podcasts throughout for the playoffs. That is coming your way. So just stay tuned. Follow Rany on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. I will keep you up to date on when those are going to be. We're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Don't forget the seal coating. Need to get it done before the weather turns cold. It's booking up fast. Call 816-484-3338. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot. That's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. And by our friends at Restore Hyper Wellness. First time IV therapy is just $99 when you mention Petro. Mention my last name, Petro, Petro, and your first IV therapy is just $99. So for the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Kaufman Corner Playoff Edition podcast.